Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Tuesday, July 1st. Looking at our fire potential impact slide, we definitely have active weather occurring and will be occurring over the next few days across the Great Basin. Today, thunderstorms will increase and spread further north with a mix of wet and dry thunderstorms over the eastern half of the Great Basin, associated with some pulses of monsoon moisture coming up from the south. We also have an area of low pressure moving into the Pacific Northwest, and that will generate some isolated, drier type thunderstorms in parts of Idaho and also western sides of Nevada on the northern side of the Sierra Front. These would be more isolated, with most of the coverage being over the eastern half of the Great Basin, but still a concern. Also, we'll have some increasing southerly winds in between these two features across parts of central and northern Nevada today, where wind gusts will be in the 30 to 35 mile per hour range and could even see some gusts to 40 miles per hour down south. As we move into Wednesday and Thursday, thunderstorms continue to increase, although we will see some increasing moisture over parts of Utah and the Arizona Strip. So these thunderstorms may transition to a wetter variety, at least with spotty areas of wetting rains. Some storms will still be on the drier side and just have an increase in humidity with not much rainfall. But we will have quite a bit of coverage over the eastern and southern half of the Great Basin Wednesday, with also isolated storms continuing up into central Idaho and along the Sierra Front. On Thursday, drier air moves into western sides of the Great Basin, so we will see the zephyr winds increase along the Sierra Front, so that'll be something to watch, especially if we see any lightning over the next couple of days. But we will see breezier winds and dry conditions in western Nevada Thursday, which will push thunderstorm activity to the eastern half of the Great Basin, and we will likely see additional moisture up across Idaho. Over the last 24 hours, we saw widely scattered thunderstorms in the higher terrain of Utah, and also some isolated storms further west into northern Nevada and southern Idaho. These thunderstorms only produced a few hundredths of an inch of precipitation, at least reported by the RAWs, in some of these more heavier clusters of thunderstorms. For the most part, a very spotty, if any, precipitation. We did have 11 fires reported yesterday for over 174 acres across the Great Basin, and a new problematic fire in the southern part of the Ely district, and this will be impacted by gusty winds today, so definitely some concerns down in some of those areas. Over the last 7 to 14 days, again, dry conditions aside from the thunderstorms yesterday have continued in many areas of the Great Basin. The ERC point map shows the ERCs above the 90th to 97th percentile, really across much of the Great Basin, with the exception of far northwest Nevada and up into western and central Idaho. However, many of these areas that even have lower ERCs do have significant fine fuel loading, so we have really concerns across the Great Basin with respect to fire potential, both with fine fuel loading in some areas and low fuel moistures in others. And looking at some of our ERC conditions, you can see ERCs are near record highs for the time of year in areas that we've already had large fires in parts of Wyoming and Utah. Satellite loop from this morning shows that moisture pushing north. You can already see cloud cover and cumulus clouds developing over southern and eastern Nevada and across much of the western half of Utah, also up into Idaho and Wyoming. These areas of cloud cover this morning will be the focus of where most of the thunderstorms will be occurring. We will see some lightning activity just to the west of the cloud shield, and also again in parts of the Sierra Front late today, and also pushing up into southern Idaho. The smoke forecast for the next 2 days, as generally hazy conditions expected, as we still have large fires in the region and to our south. So with that southerly flow, we'll continue to see areas of smoke move across the region. For later today, the weather pattern, you can see this low along the California coast. And again, that will help push monsoon moisture further north over the eastern half of the Great Basin and also increase those southerly winds in central Nevada. So we do have high risk today for parts of the higher terrain up southern and central Utah for the increase in lightning, and also for the increase in winds in parts of eastern Nevada, again, where we have the new large fire. Transport winds, you can see the gustiest winds today will be over parts of central Nevada. However, the eastern side will clip the southern part of Lincoln County. Also, we will have some breezy winds up over northern Nevada. And so again, outside of this area of stronger winds is where we'll see most of our lightning activity. And you can see that indicated by some of the gusty outflow winds over the eastern half of the Great Basin and even along the Sierra Front into Northern California. Relative humidity today will still remain low outside of some of the higher terrain that will see some of those buildups in thunderstorms today, most areas in the single digits to teens. Temperatures today will be some of the hottest temperatures up north. We will see highs in the upper 90s to low 100s across southern Idaho, and generally mid to upper 90s in most other areas, with the exception of obviously the hot temperatures in southern Nevada. You can see the thunderstorm coverage here on the right, the potential, mostly over the eastern half of the Great Basin, but still some of those isolated storms along the Sierra Front into parts of northwest Nevada. As we move into Wednesday, this trough along the west coast moves a little bit further inland. This will continue most of the thunderstorm activity in some of the same areas. We'll see it today. So we do have some high risk for lightning back further west into eastern Nevada. You might see a bit more coverage there tomorrow than we will today, but today we will see thunderstorms in that general vicinity. Also over western Wyoming is where we'll see a little bit more lightning coverage tomorrow than we will today, although today there will be a few isolated storms up there as well. So definitely increase in fire potential with this lightning before the moisture really sets in. You can see on Wednesday, the main winds are going to be associated with gusty outflow winds, and you can see those scattered around the Great Basin. Otherwise, relative humidity will be coming up over the Arizona Strip and southern Utah, as this will be day 3 of any lightning in the state. So we will see a bit of the moisture start to take hold and a somewhat decreasing fire potential in some areas, but other areas that don't see the wetting rains from these storms still will have a threat on Wednesday. Otherwise, the driest conditions will be around the periphery of that moisture in western and northern Nevada up into southern Idaho. Temperatures will tick downwards a few degrees up north, but still remain very hot, otherwise low to mid 90s across the region. And you can see Wednesday, a pretty active day again for thunderstorms, almost region-wide. There might be parts of Idaho that see minimal coverage, but really for the most part, we will continue to see showers and thunderstorms developing across the region. By Thursday, we start to see some drier air push in from the west, pushing that moisture a little bit further east. So our significant fire potential does moderate a bit in parts of Utah and over into Wyoming, as we do get some of that moisture from the thunderstorms. Otherwise, moderate fire potential remains over western and northern Nevada. We haven't issued any high risk for western Nevada yet for that increase in winds, but we'll be keeping an eye on that. Just right now, it's looking like a marginal red flag event, but that will be something that we'll be keeping an eye on. And you can see those winds on Thursday, most of those gusts kind of right around 30 miles per hour. So we'll see if those increase at all as we get towards the Thursday time period. Otherwise, relative humidity generally in the teens across Nevada and higher across Idaho and eastern sides of the Great Basin. Temperatures will continue dropping a bit on Thursday, still remain warm and above normal, but mostly in the low 90s or even upper 80s in some of the areas up north. Otherwise, thunderstorms Thursday, again, will be pushed a little bit further east. Still could see some activity in parts of the southern portion of the Carson district into Battle Mountain. However, much of the activity will be over the eastern half of the region. And you can see there might be a little bit better potential of some wetting rains in the higher terrain of Utah going into western Wyoming by Thursday. 3-day amount of precipitation, really the only heavier amounts of precipitation concentrated will be in the higher terrain of Utah eventually, going forward over the next couple of days, parts of Wyoming, and then central Idaho. Anywhere else, any precipitation will either be light or very spotty. As we go into the 4th of July holiday, we will see a weak trough move across the region, so some breezy winds, but drier conditions, with the exception of up into central and eastern Idaho, where moisture will linger, and you can see that lower fire potential for the salmon chalice. Otherwise, low to moderate fire potential remains across the Great Basin, and even areas where fire potential moderated a bit in the south towards a mid to late week from the recent moisture. By Friday, Saturday, will start to dry out again already and return to moderate fire potential. And you can see that going into Saturday, where we'll continue with those drier conditions and gradually increasing fire potential. Also on Sunday and into early next week is when we'll start to see maybe some moisture move north again for another return of thunderstorms during the early to mid portion of next week in parts of Utah, the Arizona Strip, and maybe even eastern Nevada. The 7-day total precipitation doesn't look much different than the 3-day, maybe a little bit more moisture moving in that early part of day 4 up in Idaho. Otherwise, the 8 to 14-day outlook, taking us from July 8th through the 14th, shows continued above normal temperatures, and the above normal precipitation signature will be associated with the monsoon and mainly impacting far southern and eastern areas of the Great Basin, with only pulses of thunderstorms impacting Idaho and western Nevada, but again, the deeper moisture staying well to the south and east. That concludes our webcast for today. Check back tomorrow for the latest updates.